midnight screams.
I was at the beach today with my mates Talon and Lizzie. We were just sitting around waxing our boards, sipping coldies, before we planned to hit the surf. The sun was high in the sky, wispy clouds streaking towards the horizon, and the sand's warmth melted through my wetty as the sea breeze blew my hair in my face. I was looking out at the horizon, and a blonde girl walked by, in what could generously be called swimmers. As I observed the amount of tanning lotion-covered skin on her body, I saw something weird. On her left arse cheek, a round red mark oozed blood from several punctures around the edges. "Oi!" I called out to her. She glanced back and pulled her nose up at me. I pointed at her and instantly realized my mistake. She scoffed, flipped me off, and kept walking. I stood up and jogged after her. Wait, you've gotta... "Listen, asshole." She spun with a fury in her eyes and spoke in an American accent. I didn't fly halfway around the world to get catcalled by some ugly jerk-off. I was taken aback and stuttered out, "But you..." "Screw off, creep. I just want to get back in the water. Leave me alone." I watched her go, blood still oozing down her tanned leg as she made her way toward a group of her friends. I turned defeated back to Talon and Lizzie, who were both in a fit of giggles. "I think she fancies you, Ewan," barked Talon. "Worst she could say is no, right?" said Lizzie, throwing her head back. "You guys didn't see it?" "Oh, we saw and heard everything." "That's rough, mate," said Talon. "I didn't know you were into American Sheilas," said Lizzie, still giggling. "I didn't know she was American. But didn't you see? She was bleeding from her backside," I said, flopping down next to my board. "Mate, you can't say that," said Talon, almost spitting out his beer. "Oh no, his mum hasn't told him about that yet," Lizzie said. "It was a bite mark. She had some kind of bite mark and it was bleeding. I was just trying to help." Okay, mate. Whatever lets you hit on Americans." I shook my head and went back to waxing my board. Talon stood up. "All this laughing has me on the verge of pissing myself." "Hurry back," Lizzie said, giving him a smack on the arse as he got up and called him something that made the Americans all turn their heads. Lizzie and Talon had a weird on-again, off-again romance going, and this time it seemed like something might actually come of it, given we were close to graduating university. Talon told me he was thinking about buying a ring, and I figured it was a good time for him to finally wise up and grow a pair. "You know we're just joking, right?" Lizzie's tone turned sympathetic. Yeah, whatever," I said, looking over at the American girls sunbathing farther down the beach. "There's a Sheila right there for you. Maybe just stick with Aussies though," she said, smiling sweetly. I know. I wasn't paying her much mind, instead trying to see if anyone else had noticed the girl's affliction. We laid on the beach and waited for Talon to come back. It took a while. When he eventually got back, he was walking lopsided, like his wetty didn't fit right. "Why are you walking so funny? Got a stiffy?" I said. "Rack off," he said. "What took you so long?" Lizzie said. "Had to take a dump. Toilet was bleeding uncomfortable, and my leg fell asleep while I was trying to pinch it off. Come on, I'm frothing for the surf." He picked up his board and walked toward the water. Lizzie and I followed. As we approached the edge of the waves, a mum 30 meters down the beach screamed, My son, he's stuck in the rip. Somebody help him. She pointed into the waves where a little boy of maybe 7 bobbed up and down, struggling and gasping. Lizzie, Talon and I all dropped our boards and ran into the waves. He couldn't have been more than 20 meters from the shore. I ran in, cool water embracing me. I dove into the base of a wave and swam hard, all the years of surfing paying off as my arms rhythmically pulsed against the blue. The boy thrashed and tried to yell, water making him cough and sputter, before he was dunked by the next wave. I could feel the rip current dragging him and me out. I kicked hard over the next wave, reaching to grab him. The mop of blonde hair went under as his hand brushed my fingertips. I dove and grabbed him by the waist, kicking hard and then breaching the surface. The boy struggled, retching and heaving against me, kicking my legs as I tried to tread water.
"It's okay. I got you," I said, breathing heavily as I tried to calm him down. Lizzie and Talon were there an instant later, and together we took turns slowly moving the boy back to the shore against the rip current. He kept coughing and gasping. By the time we could stand on the sand, a pair of lifeguards and a small crowd of people had gathered to meet us. They hauled the boy out of the surf and checked on him as he coughed furiously. The mother thanked us, and we stood around long enough to make sure he was okay. As the lifeguards checked him, I budged through the crowd to kneel next to him after he had stopped coughing. "Looks like you must have gotten caught up on a rock," one lifeguard said. "Got a scrape through your swimmers. Grab that towel." The other lifeguard grabbed a towel and padded it against the boy's backside. There was a near circular rip in the shorts, with blood starting to soak them. "You good, mate? Almost turned into a shark biscuit there," I said, trying my best to imitate the comforting smile of an authority figure. The boy had the glazed-over look of shock on his face, and I faintly heard him mumble, "I want to get back in the water." "I think you've had enough water for the day, mate," said the second lifeguard, chuckling. "We'd better get a doctor to check you out." They helped him up, and the crowd started to disperse. The first lifeguard stood and stepped towards us. "Good job, you three, and thanks. That could have been bad. Almost the second one today. You lot all right?" "Yeah, I think we're good. We good to hit the surf?" said Talon. "Yeah, I'm not worried about you. Try to relax and have a good time." We retrieved our boards and swam out to catch some waves. It was a perfect afternoon, and it helped relieve the tension after coming off the adrenaline high. Cool water, warm sun, a slight breeze, and great waves drowned all our worries. Surfing has a way of doing that for us three. Uni and shitty families and being broke didn't matter when you were standing on a board, wind your hair, the power of the ocean behind you. I call it nirvana. About an hour and a half after we'd caught our first wave, I was floating on my board waiting for another one, and something bumped my board. I was staring at the shore when the nudge brought me back to reality. I looked down into the water and watched a 4-meter great white shark glide under my board. All the tension that faded away sprang back into my body. Its powerful tail fin nicked my board as I watched its dorsal fin rise out of the water. Little cleaner fish followed it as I watched the fin circle like a knife being brandished by a thug. Then it turned and headed directly for Talon, who floated 30 meters away next to Lizzie. "Oi, Talon," I yelled, waving frantically. "Shark!" I motioned with a hand above my head like a fin and pointed toward him. He turned to see me motioning. Then his eyes got wide
as he was the fin for himself. He mouthed a curse and started paddling, Lizzie in stride with him. I paddled with all my might, yelling and trying to splash, hoping the shark might be distracted by me. My heart leapt into my throat as I felt another tug on my board and saw two hammerheads circling below me, more cleaner fish circling with them like vultures in a watery sky. I swam as fast as I could. Lizzie screamed. I heard a snap as Talon cried out in pain, and the temperature of my guts matched the temperature of the water. As a wave lifted me out of the surf, I saw Lizzie floating next to Talon on her board, trying to pull them both along. A trail of red billowed behind them from a bite on Talon's leg, like red smoke from a signal fire summoning danger. My adrenaline surged as I pushed my arms faster, reaching them in a few seconds. Talon was glassy-eyed, coughing and flailing to stay afloat, while Lizzie searched the waves with a panicked gaze for the shark. Ragged screams escaped her mouth with each thrash, but as I pulled alongside Talon's cracked board, I yelled loud enough to snap her out of the trance. "Lizzie, swim!" Within a few seconds, our synced strokes pushed us in front of a cresting wave, boosting us towards the shore. As my feet kicked in open water, dread filled my mind as I waited for my legs to become chum. The red cloud of blood swirled as I kicked, creating an atmosphere of chaos and despair, waiting to be cut through by a pristine predator. The wave carried us forward into water shallow enough to stand, and we dragged ourselves and Talon onto the beach. He screamed as his injured leg dragged against the sand, and once we were out of the waves, I turned to see how terrible damage truly was. It was eerie to see such a clean chunk taken out of his thigh, semicircular, as if some child had done an arts and crafts project on his leg. Blood seeped from the wound and coloured the sand. As Talon groaned, Lizzie looked at me in total shock. "Take his wetty off," I said. "Stop the bleeding." We unzipped his wetsuit. Thankfully, he was wearing swimmers underneath, though they had a biscuit cutter rip to match his wetsuit. I remembered rudimentary first aid classes from school, and so I took the arm of his wetsuit and tied it around his leg just above the wound. As I cinched down hard on the knot, Talon screamed and thrashed onto his side. Lizzie tried to shush him and held his head, tears streaking down her face. As he rolled onto his side, I got a good look at the bite. Layers of skin and muscle oozed and spurted blood into the open air, like a sink slowly filling itself. I checked to make sure the tourniquet was high enough, then saw there was blood leaking through his shorts higher up his leg. I tore at the rip to expose another bite mark on his glute. This wasn't like the crater the shark had made. While also circular, it didn't look like a chunk of flesh had broken away. Puncture wounds lined it, contributing a steady flow to the pool of red already on the sand. In my hesitation, the lifeguards rushed to Talon with a first aid kit. A medical ute had pulled farther on the beach, and the lifeguard got out and carried a stretcher to us. The lifeguards fixed a new tourniquet on Talon's leg, though he reacted with only medium discomfort this time, since he had lost so much blood. As we lifted and carried him to the ute, Talon said my name through shaky breaths. "Yeah, mate?" I leaned down to hear the words he mouthed. I want to get back in the water. He held my gaze as we kept hauling. You going to be okay, mate? I said, unsure of what to reply. We only have room for one, said one of the lifeguards to me and Lizzie. We looked at each other, tears on my cheeks now matching hers. You better go. Keep talking to him. I'll take the car, I said. Lizzie, lip quivering, nodded and gave me a quick hug. She got in the seat next to Talon. I was hit with sand spray as the ute tore off up the beach. I returned to the waterline to pick up our boards, trying to cheer myself with thoughts of how mad Talon would be if I left his board with a rocking bite mark in it after he lost a chunk of his leg. The waves crashed on the bloody sand. The ocean was a friend no more, as people had hurriedly gotten out of the water after the shark attack. As I dragged the boards up the beach, I passed people gathering their belongings, though some just stood and stared out at the waves, trying to catch a glimpse of the shark that was digesting a section of my friend's leg. The sand felt too hot under my feet, the waves too loud in my ears, and the wind too violent against my face. The song of the gulls was cruel. I made my way up the beach to the bathroom, and with a shaking hand opened the door. I sighed in relief as the sun's light vanished around me and cool concrete met my shoes. I settled myself on the toilet and put my face in my hands, blocking out the remaining light. A sharp pain pinched me through my wetsuit, and I stood in alarm. I turned and looked at the toilet. In the bottom of the bowl, circling in the clear water, was a small black fish, about the size of my hand. It had a dorsal fin that stuck out of the water and two beady black eyes like a shark. As I stood over the bowl, it dove and then rose to the surface, showing that it had no lower jaw or gills. Its teeth were arrayed in a circle like a leech or a lamprey. It jumped a few inches out of the water as if inviting me to play with it. I turned and dashed out of the bathroom, but my left leg was already going numb, and so I stumbled through the door into the harsh sunlight and the person waiting in line. I looked up from the sound to see the American girl from earlier standing over me, a blank look on her face. I'm sorry, I blurted, face flushing. About that, and about earlier. I didn't mean... I trailed off as I noticed she wasn't even looking at me. I followed her gaze past me to where I heard waves crashing and gulls screeching. Except it wasn't gulls screeching. It was people screaming. Many of them stood at the water's edge and yelled. There were still a bunch of people just standing on the beach, staring at the waves. I looked at the water and the hundreds of dorsal fins cutting through its surface, like some blender of monstrous proportions. I watched as the American girl sprinted past me towards the ocean, blonde hair flowing behind her, and in the spot where the bite mark had been was one of those tiny black fish. When she hit the water, her body vaporized into red pigment as dozens of sharks leapt onto her in a feeding frenzy. The others standing and watching the water, each with similar bite marks, ran after her. They were devoured in seconds. Those unaffected by the bite that tried to save their loved ones met a similar fate. I watched people silently flailing in a shoreline of red, faces unchanged as they were consumed in the meat grinder of fins. The waves turned blood red, soaking the sand into a crimson coastline littered with specks of flesh. I turned and ran. I drove my car as far into the outback as I could. Lizzie has been calling me non-stop for the rest of the day. I'm too afraid to pick up the phone. I'm scared to drive anywhere. I know if I start the car again, I'll drive back to the beach. I know that because I want to get back in the water.
The first rule of the Underdark is simple. You do not breathe when the springs groan. I pressed my ventral plates into the grey dust, flattening my liquid shadow form until I was little more than a stain on the floorboards. Above me, the wooden slats of the bed frame bowed. Creak. Groan. The sound was a thunderclap in my sanctuary, a tectonic warning that the Titan was shifting its weight. My 3 hearts hammered against my ribs. Thump, hiss, thump, hiss, thump, hiss. A rhythm so loud I was certain it would vibrate up through the mattress and betray me. I am Malefice. I am the shadow in the corner, the eater of bad dreams, the thing that has made 1,000 children wet their beds in terror. I have feasted on the adrenaline of the innocent for 3 centuries. I have driven nannies to madness and forced families to move across oceans. But I am weeping. A tear, thick and black like crude oil, leaked from my primary eye and pooled in the dust. I didn't dare wipe it away. Movement was death. Above me, the breathing changed. Usually, the sleep breath of a human child is a soft, rhythmic woof, shh. It is the dinner bell for my kind. It signals that the dreamscape is open, ready for us to slide in and plant the seeds of terror. But the thing above, the boy named Toby, did not breathe like prey. His breath was a wet, clicking rasp. It sounded like scissors snipping through wet silk. Snip, hiss, snip, hiss. He wasn't sleeping. He was waiting. My stomach cramped, a sharp knot of hunger twisting my entrails. I haven't fed in 6 nights. A fear-eater can go a week, maybe 2, before he begins to fade, losing his cohesion and turning into harmless mist. I looked at my hands, clawed, obsidian, terrifying, and saw the edges were already blurring, turning to smoke. I needed to leave. I needed to find a new house, a new child, a normal child who cried for their mother when they saw a shadow move. But to leave, I had to cross the carpet. The carpet was the kill zone. I shifted my weight, inching 1 knee forward. The movement disturbed a cluster of dust bunnies. They rolled away like tumbleweeds. Creak. The bed above me exploded with motion. I froze, my blood turning to ice. The mattress slammed down against the slats as the weight above moved violently. A heavy, singular thump hit the floorboards right next to the bedskirt. He was out of bed. I squeezed my eyes shut, retracting my tentacles, putting myself into a tight, trembling ball against the far wall of the Underdark. Please, I prayed to the old nightmares. Please let him just be going to the bathroom. Silence stretched, thick, heavy, suffocating silence. Then the bed skirt lifted. It didn't fly up all at once. It rose slowly, agonizingly, just an inch. A single pale finger hooked under the fabric, lifting it like a stage curtain. Light from the hallway street lamp slashed into my darkness, blinding me. I squinted, my secondary eyes watering. An eye appeared in the gap. It was blue, but not the sky blue of innocence. It was the pale, washed-out blue of a drowned thing floating in stagnant water. The pupil was blown wide, swallowing the iris, a black hole searching for gravity. Malefice? The voice was a whisper, but it carried no tremble. It carried a smile. Are you hungry, Malefice? I didn't answer. I held my breath until my lungs burned. I know you're there, Toby whispered. I can hear your tummy growling. The finger let go. The bed skirt dropped. The darkness returned. I let out a ragged exhale, shaking so hard my teeth rattled. He was mocking me. The predator was toying with the mouse. I remembered the first night I arrived here. I had slithered in through the window, hungry and arrogant. I had seen a small boy under the quilt, a perfect morsel. I had swelled to my full height, a 7-foot nightmare of smoke and teeth, and I had roared my terrifying, soul-shaking roar. The boy hadn't screamed. He hadn't hidden under the covers. He had sat up. He had looked at me with those dead, waterlogged eyes and said, "Finally, make me a balloon animal." And when I refused, when I reached out to harvest his fear, he bit me. He bit my shadow flesh, and it hurt. It wasn't a physical bite. It sheared off a piece of my essence. He chewed it and swallowed it, and I saw his eyes flare with a terrible, golden hunger. That was when I realized I had made a grave mistake. I wasn't the invasive species here. I was the livestock. Scritch, scritch, scritch. The sound came from the carpet. He was moving. I risked a glance toward the gap between the floor and the bed frame. I could see his feet. They were bare, pale, the toenails long and jagged. He was pacing, back and forth, guarding the exit. I needed a plan. The closet. If I could make it to the closet, there was a vent, an old HVAC intake that led to the basement. From there, I could squeeze through the dryer exhaust and escape into the night. I would starve for a few days, yes, but I would live. I could find a stray cat to scare, gather just enough strength to move to the next town. But the closet was 10 feet away. 10 feet of open ocean, with a shark patrolling the surface. I waited. Time in the Underdark is fluid, but I counted the rhythm of the house settling. The furnace kicked on, a low rumble that vibrated the floor. Now, the noise of the furnace would mask my movement. I flowed. I didn't crawl. I poured myself forward like spilled ink, keeping flat, keeping silent. I reached the edge of the bed. The pacing feet had stopped near the door. He was blocking the hallway, but the closet was to the left. I slid a single ocular tentacle out from under the bed skirt to check the perimeter. The room was bathed in shadows, the moonlight casting long, skeletal shapes across the walls. Toys lay scattered on the floor, but they were wrong. A teddy bear with its eyes gouged out and replaced with marbles. A plastic soldier melted into a scream. A colouring book left open, the pages covered not in crayon,
but in meticulous, scratching charcoal drawings of things that looked like me. Toby was standing by the door. His back was to me. He was humming a song, a low, atonal melody that made my skin crawl. Rock-a-bye baby on the treetop. When the wind blows, the eyes will all pop. He was distracted. I surged. I shot out from under the bed, abandoning stealth for speed. I became a blur of smoke and claws scrambling across the rug. The closet door was ajar, just a crack, enough for me. I hit the gap and squeezed through, pulling my trailing tentacles in behind me. I collapsed onto the closet floor, surrounded by the smell of cedar and mothballs. Safe. I lay there for a moment, gasping, waiting for the door to be ripped open, waiting for the scream. Nothing. The humming continued, uninterrupted. He hadn't seen me. A laugh bubbled up in my throat, a hysterical, wet sound. I had done it. The great Malefice, the Night Stalker, had outwitted a human child. I turned toward the back wall, looking for the vent. It was there. A rectangular grate near the floor, painted over with layers of white latex. I dug my claws into the screws. They were old, rusted into place, but my strength was returning with the adrenaline. I twisted. Metal shrieked. The screw popped. I worked frantically. One screw, two. The grate loosened. I could smell the basement air. Musty, damp, glorious freedom. I pulled the grate away and tossed it onto a pile of old shoes. The duct was dark, narrow, tighter than I liked, but I could fit. I shoved my head inside, dragging my shoulders through. The metal was cold against my belly. I crawled. 10 feet, 20. The darkness here was absolute, but it was my darkness. It was empty. No pale boys, no biting teeth. I rounded a bend in the ductwork, seeing a faint light ahead. The basement. I scrambled faster, my heart's soaring. I would escape. I would go to the next county. I would find a nice, normal family with a child who slept with a nightlight and believed in Santa Claus. I would never, ever enter a house with a red door again. I reached the end of the duct. A wire mesh blocked the exit, but it was flimsy. I lashed out with a claw, slicing through it like paper. I tumbled out of the vent and hit the concrete floor. I stood up, shaking off the dust, expanding to my full height. I stretched my limbs, letting the shadows coil around me, restoring my dignity. I am Malefice, I whispered to the damp basement air, my voice gaining its old gravelly resonance. And I am free. I looked around to get my bearings. I needed to find a window or the dryer vent. The basement was large, unfinished. Concrete walls, exposed insulation. In the center of the room sat a small wooden table, and sitting at the table was a tea set. My blood ran cold. It was a plastic tea set, pink and yellow. There were 3 chairs arranged around it. In the first chair sat a stuffed rabbit, its head torn off and sewn back on backward. In the second chair sat a creature, or what was left of one. It was a grotesque, a cousin of my species, a bulky, stone-skinned haunter of attics. It was slumped over, its rocky hide cracked and glued together, its eyes replaced with shiny buttons. It was dead, stuffed, taxidermied. The third chair was empty, and on the plate in front of the empty chair was a name tag, written in crayon, Malefice. I stared at the card, my mind refusing to process the geometry. I had crawled down, I had gone through the vents. I was in the basement. Click. The sound came from the top of the stairs. The basement door opened, light flooded down. A silhouette stood at the top of the stairs, small, pyjama-clad, holding a flashlight. "You cheated," Toby said. His voice echoed off the concrete. I backed away, pressing myself against the cold cinder block wall. "How?" I stammered. "I went through the vents. All the vents go here," Toby said, taking a step down. Creak. "The house knows I like to have tea parties. The house helps." He wasn't a child, I saw it now. The shadow he cast on the stairs wasn't human. It was vast, many-limbed and jagged. It stretched out behind him, climbing the walls, darker than the absence of light. He took another step. "You broke the rules, Malefice. You left the bedroom before the sun came up." "Stay back!" I roared. I tried to make it terrifying. I flared my cowl, exposing my rows of serrated fangs. I summoned the psychic dread that stops human hearts. Toby didn't blink. He just tilted his head. Cute. He reached into the pocket of his pajamas and pulled out something silver. It glinted in the flashlight beam. A staple gun. Mr. Rockbottom kept falling out of his chair, Toby said, gesturing to the dead grotesque at the table. He wouldn't sit still for the tea. I had to fix him. He descended the stairs. Thump, thump, thump. I looked for an exit. There were small windows high up, near the ceiling, but they were painted black, barred. "Please," I whimpered, my dignity shattering. "I'm old, I'm tired, I taste terrible, I'm all gristle and fear." "I don't want to eat you," Toby said, reaching the bottom of the stairs. He smiled, and for a second the skin didn't move right. It didn't wrinkle. It just stretched, pulling too tight across the bone, smooth and poreless like wet latex. "I told you, I want to play." He walked toward the table. He patted the empty chair. "Sit." The command wasn't a word. It was a psychic hook that snagged my spine. My legs moved without my permission. I fought it, clawing at the air, my mind screaming, "Run!" But my body betrayed me. I walked stiffly, jerkily, like a marionette on invisible strings. I approached the tea table. I smelled the grotesque next to me. He smelled of sawdust and formaldehyde. "Sit," Toby said again. I sat. The tiny plastic chair groaned under my weight. Toby climbed onto the table. He sat cross-legged in the center, towering over us. He picked up a plastic teapot. It was empty, but he poured from it anyway. "Sugar?" he asked. I couldn't speak. My jaw was clamped shut by terror. "One lump then," he decided. He mimed dropping a cube into my cup. He leaned in close. His face was inches from mine. I could see the pores in his skin. They were too uniform, too perfect, like synthetic rubber stretched over a frame. "Mr. Rockbottom was boring," Toby whispered, glancing at the stuffed husk of the grotesque. "He broke too fast. He stopped screaming after only 2 days." Toby turned back to me. His blue eyes were swirling now, churning like a whirlpool. "You look stronger, Malefice. You look like you can last a whole week." He raised the staple gun. He didn't point it at me. He pointed it at his own hand. Thwack! He fired a staple into his own palm. He didn't flinch. He didn't bleed. He just laughed. A sound like glass grinding in a disposal. Your turn, he giggled, handing me the gun. My hand took it. I didn't want to take it. I tried to drop it. Play the game, the shadow on the wall whispered. I looked at the staple gun. I looked at my own hand, the hand that had terrified generations. What happens if I win? I choked out. Toby grinned, and his teeth kept growing, pushing past his lips, long and grey and sharp. Then you get to be the teapot next time. I put the gun to my palm. I looked at the empty plastic teapot on the tray. I looked at its spout, frozen in a silent scream. I wondered who used to sit in my chair. The basement lights went out. Thwack!